has a rich genesis from the ANC, from Neville Alexander, from Steve Biko, through Paulo Jordan, through Thabo Mbeki, through the Communist Party even in South Africa, whose policies I disagree with, but whose stance on racialism has been exemplary. These are the fundamental principles of non-racialism which we subscribe to. And then it informs our policies. So we say, in terms of non-racialism, we're not going to beat the race flag. We're going to quantify the dispossession. So let's see how you quantify dispossession. If you've been dispossessed in terms of land, then that needs to be quantified. And and how it's affected you, and how it's affected the person that the land who's giving up the land, whether that needs to be paid for, whether you were directly responsible, or whether it was 100 years or 300 years later, has to be taken into account. These are practicalities of the land issue. In terms of the other issues, we say we will quantify dispossession, or what is required to bring people to a point where they can compete. Now, this is very difficult. We have very few resources in this country. The ANC has squandered the resources. We are practically bankrupt as a result of racial policies, as a result of failed policies, which have deployed cadres on the basis of race in our SOEs, which have bankrupted this country to the point where we had no fiscal space at all. That fiscal space should be used in the past properly. It hasn't. How do you use it properly in the past on a non-racial basis? You provide everybody with an absolutely proper education. Our education, for the amount of money we spend on it, is pitiful. It is shameful. The 9 to 12-year-olds are unable to meaningfully comprehend or read or write, never mind do math. That is a shocking indictment. Our hospitals, you go and see if you want to take your grandmother or your wife or your daughter or your son to one of the state hospitals in this COVID nightmare that we are facing. I'd rather die at home. It is despicably what has been done is disgraceful. Look how people live in the informal settlements in terms of how housing money has been misspent and the policies have not got people there. Now, if you have done all these things properly on a non-racial basis, you would have empowered 98.2% of the population who are largely black anyway and would be who would have benefited from all this. They would be the beneficiaries. And you wouldn't do it on a racial basis. You wouldn't allow people to beat a racial drum like the EFF is doing to achieve nefarious policies and an ugly agenda. We would be building on the reconciliation that Nelson Mandela initiated. That is the rich history that we have in our country that I alluded to in non-racialism. Mr. Cachalia must go and think again. This is unpalatable.
Mr. Cachalia, when we refer to racial policies and the DA's stance on it, are we excluding or including affirmative action?
You know, the affirmative action policies we must look at in this country and see what they have achieved. They have failed. What they have done is they've empowered an elite at the expense of the majority of people. That majority who are, as I said, 98% black. So we have created a small elite that has been empowered massively, that drive down in Maseratis, but as Minister Nomvula Makonyane does, because somebody gave it to her, she says, and she thinks that's right, that somebody gave a 2 million rand loan for her to put on a deposit on the Maserati in the hope that they would get some favorable dispensation in terms of a contract at Eskom. And she doesn't understand that this is fundamentally morally reprehensible. This is what that sort of affirmative action has done. It has singularly failed. Now, if you put together a scorecard of sorts, as we have suggested, in line with the Sustainable Development Goals, and incentivize firms to move in those directions, which have been adopted by the United Nations as a laudable way to go, then you're on the right track. And as I say, the majority of people, because this country is largely black, will benefit from it. But let's understand this. What you need to do, in my view, is, and my party's view, is to ensure that we lift people up to the point with education, with health, with all these things I talked about, to the point where they can compete from a point where they've had an equality of opportunity presented to themselves. Now that is easier said than done. I understand the difficulties involved. I understand that equality of opportunity means to compete properly requires social capital as well as the things I talked about. It requires networks and the like. These things are difficult to put in place, but we must do our best. We have done our worst in this country, and it's got us nowhere. Now's the time to do our best, and there's no time like the present to start, which is why we have put these policies in place for everyone to see and to say, criticize on our policies constructively. Say this development goal you're looking at here is not quite right. Let's tweak it to achieve this or that. But no, all we get is a blanket hoo-ha about race, which frankly I am tired about. I mean, my parents gave their lives for freedom in this country, and that freedom has been denigrated. The majority of our people live in the most appalling conditions, and that must be laid squarely at the feet of government, whose policies, including the failed affirmative action policy that they've put in place, has delivered us to this parlous position.
Mr. Cachalia, going back to affirmative action, we cannot deny that many affirmative action policies have failed, and the elite has certainly benefited at the expense of majority of South Africans. And you quote Professor Firoz Cachalia that when we refer to the preamble of the South African Constitution, we the people, and essentially Prof. Firoz argues that we the South African people confers rights of political participation and personhood on all without regard to race or other irrelevant consideration. Now, is it fair to completely disregard affirmative action based on its failure at grassroots levels?
Well, policies must be judged by their efficacy. And if the policies have failed, then you've got to put other policies in place. And if you look at the Constitution, which Firoz has referred to and you referred to, the policies, our Constitution is actually founded on non-racialism and has got scant regard for race. Yes, there's a tension between the transformative aspects of our Constitution and the non-racial freedom policies that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution enshrines. And there was a compromise reached. That compromise was reached and enshrined in the Constitution to allow for policies that would get us to a point where we have empowered our nation and the very people, the majority of the people in our nation. Now, over 26 years later, we've empowered nobody except a small elite. So we have to turn around and say, those policies are bunk, and we have to change them. We can't be going about business as usual. We have to change. Otherwise, the definition of madness is to keep doing the same thing over and over again in the hope that you'll get a different result. I'm not going to do that.
Mr. Cachalia, I'm finding it difficult to understand, right? And you have mentioned that policy should be judged on efficacy. I completely understand and I concede to that. But the DA claims that it has found a way to address economic justice while discarding race in its policies. So are we then insinuating that in further and future affirmative action policies, better affirmative action policies, how are we then going to implement those policies if the DA is claiming that we are going to disregard race in its policies?
Well, if you disregard race, and you've got to put something else in place. So you say, we are not going to make race the arbiter. We're going to make dispossession and disadvantage the arbiter. That is quantifiable. I can't quantify race. You are Indian, I am Indian, somebody else is black, somebody else is Chinese. That is not a quantifiable issue. It is a social construct. I am talking about the quantifiable issues. You don't have a house. That you don't own the land that you live on, but you have claim to land. Well, we can quantify that and we can go back and deal with that in a responsible fashion. You need to be given equality of opportunity to lift yourself up by your bootstraps. What do you need? What do you need and what do you lack in terms of education, in terms of health and proper living standards to give you the dignity to stand on that educational level and access that so-called opportunity. Let's address those issues. Those are tangible ways to go forward. The rest is nebulous. And if we address that on a tangible fashion, yes, 9 out of 10 times we'll be addressing the aspirations and needs and the requirements of black people.
Mm-hmm.
But so what? Why quantify it? Unless you're going to, why instead of quantifying it, why do you use race as an arbiter? Because all it's done is to give people a reason to fly a flag on a racial basis to beat others with. We've got to move away from this. We have to move away from this, or we'll never aspire to or achieve what Biko, what Neville Alexander, and what forerunners in the ANC, the noble forerunners who aspire to these things.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Cachalia, we are running out of time, but I'm still going to put forward my final question to you because I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation, right? The DA's policy conference has affirmed that it is committed to non-racialism, but it is seemingly defined by racial divisions. So how do you balance this dichotomy for the populace?
What is defined by racial divisions?
We apparently we see the racial divisions and the claims of racial allegations and racial allegations placed by certain.
Within the DA.
Yes, within the DA.
Oh no, I mean really, these discussions we had a policy conference. The policy conference was populated by all the delegates of Federal Council and all the MPs and the shadow cabinet ministers and mayors and office holders and the like. If you look at the racial breakdown of that particular body, which debated robustly, there were amendments which were put forward, which took hours of discussion and debate on these very issues that you and I are talking about. If you look at the racial demarcation and distribution of that particular body which engaged in those discussions, it is remarkably diverse. So I don't buy into that mainstream media painting of the DA as racially riven. There are people leave of their individuals, their agency. They leave of their own accord and others stay. There was a time when my views within the ANC, my deeply seated and held views, were in the minority. And I held my corner, I argued my corner, and today my corner is perhaps having some currency. That may not be forever, but it is there now, and we have put a stake in the ground leading up to these elections and the elections. And that is important. There is no issue of race here. I mean, Mr. Moody is held up as a candidate who left the party and is now saying that he was victimized on race grounds. He left because he didn't want to face pretty egregious charges that were leveled against him. I have gone and looked to those transcripts. I have looked at the charges. They are voluminous and they are egregious. He has chosen not to face those. And then he plays the race card. It's extremely easy to play the race card. If I were in my very career, I've had successes and I have failures. There were times when I was moved out of an organization or sidelined or was pushed this way, that way. I could say, it's extremely easy. They're doing that because I'm not white.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very easy card to play. You have to look into your soul and say, what what is the right thing? How do we address this? How do I fight my corner? Am I right? Am I wrong? These are introspective issues and introspective levers that we need to address. Unfortunately, people don't. They play the race card because it's extraordinarily easy to play it.
We are going to leave this. We're going to have to leave this conversation here, Mr. Cachalia. But I do thank you for your time this morning, and thank you for this engaging conversation. I must say, I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
I did too. Thank you so much. Salaam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. That was, of course, Mr. Ghaleb Cachalia, the Democratic Alliance's MP and Shadow Minister of Public Enterprises, talking about his opinion piece, which he has penned in the Times Live, titled Nonracialism, which is an intellectual tradition in South Africa. And this comes after the accusations by Mr. Ghaleb Cachalia, the executive mayor of Buffalo City, saying that the DA accusing the DA rather of downright deceit in apparently ignoring the triple social constructs of race, gender, and class since 1652.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031-208-9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Fabric Direct, now open at 224 Brickfield Road, Overport, Durban. Offering you a variety of dress fabrics, curtaining, upholstery, wallpaper, and deco. Fabric Direct, quality, price, and a range that speaks for itself. 224 Brickfield Road, Overport, Durban. Fabric Direct, definitely worth a visit.
After all these years, millions of Syrian refugees and displaced persons are still struggling to get adequate food and nutrition. Since 2014, the Al-Imdad Foundation's Flour for Syria campaign has provided daily bread to these Syrians. For just 5,000 Rand, you can sponsor 1 ton of flour and ensure that 10,000 pita loaves are delivered to desperate Syrian communities. Part donations are also accepted. Visit alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
It's a new beginning. It's a new era. Salam Media, humanitarian journalism.
20 minutes before 10 a.m. Welcome back. Assalamu alaikum. Now, the flooding from the River Nile, which is, of course, a source of life for Sudan, and it has